Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.
I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
Will be a development that will write down in the books of history and herstory a model of best practices. Yes, that is what's going to happen on this development. The other thing is that's going to happen, along with the stringent and strict leadership of our city manager, and with me walking real close with him, is that we're going to do something unusual. And that is, with the documents that were approved by the city council, for this developer to move forward with all documentation and all of its supplements that were submitted, that included subcontractors, businesses, and all that were included, that the city council, along with our mayor, approved, we're going to make good to our businesses.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, there's two of us now. We're waiting on our other person. But how's it going, Chuck?
It's going well. John is a little under the weather, so he's going to take the night off. But we're always happy to have our favorite guest co-hosts from the last couple years here, RG, and in just a little bit here we'll have Carrie Smith join us.
Yeah.
Just kind of a couple of things. There's always so much going on. We want to talk about this major issue in the 5th District. We want to touch on some of the kind of well-to-do updates. I went to this meeting last night at the Massey Center,
Right.
so I want to touch on that. We're 50 something days away from midterm elections. Any thoughts this far out still? I mean, not very far anymore, RG, but any thoughts on the elections 51 days out?
Yeah, just here's the thing. I think right now folks have got to understand the importance of not just this election, but the importance of the elections next year and really the next 3 to 5 years. What we are embarking upon is shaping a Senate at a federal and a state level, shaping city councils, shaping government in a way that's either going to work for you or against you. And if we don't take these next 3 to 5 years seriously, then we're going to get things like Roe versus Wade. And that comes from not getting out there and voting and getting a president like Trump, who has placed people in those positions to hurt us. And so we've got to start taking this seriously and really thinking about the impact that it has much broader than what we see today and tomorrow.
Well, among the vast array of big time promises in this city, you got like the arena, the port expansion over the years, this future of the fairgrounds. It was kind of hyped up as just this major deal for the West Side Corridor. Areas that very, very well. So to set this up, I just want to play, this clip from WJCL. This was just before that clip from the meeting we shared. And then I want to dive into this and bring Carrie in a few minutes afterwards. So let's just set this up from this news clip from WJCL from earlier this year.
Here's what's new at 11. The new development is on its way to Savannah.
The team behind it held a kickoff meeting to show what's in the works, for the old fairgrounds. Our Nakaya Carrero reports.
This is meant to be a ecosystem that in perpetuity will allow for growth, achievement, and the expansion of people's capacity.
District 5, home to the old Savannah Fairgrounds, will be getting a facelift that some people say is a long time coming.
Of Savannah leaders and 5th District leaders and the neighborhood there who really want to see something transformational in their community, but that is part of their community and part of the fabric and not disruptive.
Developers held a public introduction Wednesday night into the plan ahead. They say there are 4 key elements they are focusing on.
Innovation in recreation, innovation in housing, innovation in training, in workforce development, and then innovation in entertainment with a full soundstage and television studio.
One goal is to try and keep everything going into the project local, from contractors to input.
And to plan this plan development in all its phases, with housing, with recreations, with workforce development, that it gets the community input, and that we have a project that Savannah can be proud of.
The team will be hosting their first meeting this coming week in regards to phase 1, which is housing. In Savannah tonight, Nakaya Carrero.
Yeah, if I may, Chuck, the
Go
word
ahead,
innovation. Hold on. Let me say this real quick. The word innovation comes up. What I would like to see is an innovation of including the public. That's all.
Well,
why have the people been left out?
So this deal was sold, to city council, for lack of a better phrase. I don't want to say this too crassly, but it was sold with the name and reputation of former state rep J. Craig Gordon, right? You know, would you disagree? Would you disagree with that statement, Robert?
Yeah, I believe they used him just to use his name, correct? Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah,
you know, this is, you know, in the 5th district, which is one of the, you know, highest voter turnout areas. You know, we're talking about name kind of the areas, you know, that surround this. This is like Liberty City.
Well, you got right in the front of it, you got Fowler Park. On the edges, you have Fowler on one edge, you have Fowler in the front, you have Tatumville on the other edge, and on the back end, you have Liberty City. Sylvan Terrace is impacted by that as well as you got Camp Park that's impacted. And what I mean by impacted is whenever that fairground was used, folks seem to forget that Fowler Park folks were displaced and disturbed by the traffic and by the parking. I think our alderwoman seems to forget that all of that impact and leaving those people out of the conversation is really disturbing, not only to me, but to them. But I sell it to say that it's interesting how we can forget folks when we use those same people to get our special interests across.
You know, if you look at the history of this podcast, you know, this is episode number 96. You know, when we first kind of started doing full-time shows in January of 2021, there was still kind of this feeling and talking points around the city that this was a 5-4 council. Do you remember? You remember back at the beginning? You know, people said this was a 5-4 council. And sometime in the beginning of maybe the middle of 2020, you know, but certainly by 2021, when this deal emerged, at some point, the mayor pro tem started voting very consistently with the majority on council led by Mayor Van Johnson, including Alderman Dietrich Leggett, Nick Palumbo, Curtis Purdy, and Alderwoman Linda Walter Bryan. So, you know, there is a direct line of correlation between this project for the fairgrounds, which has been, you know, for, again, lack of a better phrase, one of the highest priorities of this alderwoman from the 5th district for the last many years. And I want to play a little bit more of her speech here at this meeting in a second here, but suffice to say, it's all gone bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Chuck, if the same alderwoman can't get flooding corrected, and how many years has this person been in office? How can they lead a deal of that magnitude? I mean, for God's sakes, we've had flooding just about a week ago, right here in Liberty City, where I am, you know, in her own neighborhood. There's still flooding issues that hasn't been solved in over 20 years, right? And so how can a person who can't even solve that minor problem lead a fairground project? Or is it because there's some kind of financial piece involved? I don't know.
You know, I see some of these comments. You know, I'm not gonna, you know, Betty. You know, I'm not gonna speculate too far out. I don't want to get sued by any of these people. You know, definitely, I would say that there is, you know, there's clearly some piece of this story we're missing. So what I want to do is I want to play a little bit more of this clip from the mayor pro tem at the beginning of this year. And then I want to pull up this Property Matters update to this story earlier this summer, you know, when former state rep J. Craig Gordon pulled out of the deal. So let me pull this up here one more time. This is where we left off on that.
That the city did not do what they said that they were going to do. Not on this project. I've been an engineer now for over 3 decades. Also been an employee at the engineering department with the city of Savannah. I'm very, very clear on how the procurement worked. And I'm very, very clear on how it was working. Therefore, I am just off script a little bit right now, but I'm just feeling this thing right now.
I'm sure you are.
That this development will be business as unusual. I salute the community and the hard work of the citizens of the 5th District. We have worked vigorously over the last several years to reach this historic event. As your alderwoman,
That's cute.
we will ensure that this development will be fully transparent. The community is engaged and informed on all ongoing basis, with accountability at every level. With over 36% of the residents are at or below poverty level in the 5th District, 19% of our cherished senior citizens in the 5th District are below the poverty level.
And you done nothing about that.
Development must be at the heart of transformation in addressing economic development, recreation, production studios, wellness, an array of housing options, including a significant component of senior housing. New proposed rights of ways will include sidewalks, street trees, on-street parking to connect with the surrounding existing homes and neighborhoods, and training necessary for the valued employment and business opportunities, as much more that we are looking for in our beloved community. We are excited about the collaboration with Savannah State University, Savannah Technical College, as we embrace education and training as a hallmark to our future. One of our ancestors has left with us, and I'm moving forward. Education is our passport to the future.
The hell does that to do with anything?
I want to say real quick before we move forward that we're back on YouTube Live for the first time in about 3.5 months. And, it's hard to get details out of a meta, multi-billion dollar corporation like Google, right? But, somebody or many people have been, reporting copyright or, types of things that would shut our accounts down. I know Julius has had some experience with this too over at ATR before, and so, obviously, when you're commenting on things, there's certain fair use protection. But I say that to say also, welcome back to YouTube. But I really wish I could play the clip from Coming to America, where it's just like, I believe the children,
Oh, yeah. But let me
it's all this just bloviating, Robert. And before
well,
we
I want to know who wrote the speech. Was it some
who wrote this speech?
Who wrote the speech? Was it somebody over at their shop that wrote that speech? Because it made no sense. And I'm about this is what makes me angry, Chuck. Give me 1 minute. 5th District is a district of Black folk in Savannah. And these houses were built by blood, sweat, and tears. When these folks could not go to the south side or other sides, they couldn't go to Ardsley Park. They couldn't go to Haversham Woods to have anything. So these homes to be sold down the river by a person who can't even fix flooding, it is disturbing to me. It is sad to me that this same individual will align themselves with a mayor who doesn't even understand the value of the 5th District. And it angers me to my deepest core that you still will sit there and allow and turn your back on these folks, allow folks to try to buy these homes to redevelop them in one of the most historic African-American communities in this city. And I won't go more than that, but it disturbs me that people who don't understand their history, who understand the value of this land, can sit there and blow smoke up people's behinds. Are you crazy? It just blows my mind that somebody could be that downright lost. And that's a nice word.
Well, I just want to bring before I bring Carrie in just a minute. I promise she's coming. I just want to read and put on the screen this update. And this is brought to you by Eric Curl. This is. Let me see if I can get it.
While you're looking for that, and by the way, let me add to this.
Go ahead.
And this is a shout out to SCAD. and the tourism and the MPC. As long as I'm breathing on this earth, and should I win that 5th district seat, you can take your ideas of regentrification and you know what you can do with them, because we're going to protect it. And I stand with the 5th District Coalition. I stand with the residents of the 5th District, and you will not get our land as long as I am breathing, and so help me God. And you can hold me to that.
I mean, the NPC has a lot of heat on it lately. You know, I mean, there's a investigation and all this stuff. All right, I'll just pull it up on Connect, even though we don't like them, because I think he sold this column to Connect, which sucks, but it's okay. All right, this is from August 9th. So this is a couple of weeks ago. Eric Curl, who runs Savannah Agenda, you know, I think he syndicated this column out to Connect Savannah. But title of the article is Property Matters, Savannah Fairground negotiations continue after local partner leaves development group, tax credit attempt postponed to 2023. You know, local partner J. Craig Gordon, you know, raised concerns in a March 1st letter addressed to City Manager Jay Melder about the Arizona-based stakeholders, P3 partners, involved in the project prior to his departure. According to documents obtained by Savannah Agenda, these concerns included a state indictment in July 2021 against the P3 Partners founder that Gordon, a former state rep, said was not disclosed to himself or the city. In addition, Gordon raised concern about the suspension of the tax-exempt status of the nonprofit MDF, Municipal Development Foundation, which was supposed to assist in the financing of the development project. Gordon also claimed that P3 was unwilling to pay a local design firm, which was providing design assistance at no charge.
Why can't we have a local minority Black-based developer work on that project? That's my question.
Like, how did we sign off on this as a city council in December of
Because we have no leadership. We don't have any leadership. We don't.
This was signed off on by city council in December of 2021. These are claims about an indictment in July of 2021. Okay, you know, it's astounding, right?
Well, it's silly to me. What I am sick and tired of. I want this mayor and I want this 5th district alderwoman to tell me this. How many times or how many Black developers have we offered contracts to in the city? I want a minority business, a no bid. I want the community involved. I want focus groups. But this project, the idea of having a movie studio, movie screens with elderly folks, who thought of that? What sense does that make? At the end of the day, and I've talked with members of the 5th District, like Betty Jones, who's over there in Fowler Park, like Pat Harris, who's over there in Poplar Place. And by the way, Parkers, I don't like what you did to Poplar Place, but that's another story. But I've talked to these people. And it's sad that their voices have been silenced. But at the end of the day, why can't we start over and let's have focus groups, several of them, and be transparent? That word transparency that she used in that video, man, come on. Transparency isn't hiding behind a door and not talking to your people. Transparency is sitting down with the citizens, whether it be virtual or in person, getting their feedback, putting that feedback in documentation, and sharing with the city manager and holding his tail to the fire because he makes over $200,000 a year. That's how you hold folks accountable. That's how you make get the citizens involved. That's a process that we're not used to in this district. But I digress.
Let me read this quote, you know, from a later part of the article. J. Craig Gordon said on July 28th that he disagreed with the characterization that he removed himself. Rather, he was dismissed from the project after raising his concerns. So, you know, essentially, I think, you know, we put the cart before the horse because this was, you know, really, really needed by the 5th District incumbent for, you know, political capital. You know, I mean, that's like the first thing that comes to mind. What do you think?
Yeah, we Craig has been a great leader to our area as a representative, and honestly, you know, we all know Craig enough to know that he's going to hold people to the fire. Craig's an upstanding guy. I think it's unfortunate how they maneuvered him, and that's what I'm going to use the word maneuver. But in the end of the day, I think this whole process needs to start over. And if it doesn't start over, we're gonna put some heat in the right areas. I can promise you that.
Well, let's welcome in
CJ
Smith.
Hey.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. It's been a while, Chuck.
Hi,
RG.
Hey.
So one of the most immediate observations I'm going to take here is, number one, what is fair and proper in the bidding process. Where is the accountability? I think that we're still fashioned in Savannah with what we would call respectability politics, and this kiss the ring flavor of politics is antiquated, and it doesn't raise accountability for the majority of, I would say, the politicos of Savannah to raise these questions properly and have the information readily available. That's going to be my first observation. And going back to earlier point in the discussion is, I've been looking while I was waiting in the waiting room at the design. And one of the biggest challenges I think that we have in Savannah is we can build all of the new housing that we want, but the city is pushing Savannians out of the urban core, out of the east side, out of Savannah entirely, almost even out of Midtown, out of your district, RG, and out of the south side. So how do we think that pushing people out of new apartments, new housing, isn't going to happen in this area when you talked about gentrification? So what would be the benefit of having new housing if it's going to just be students? And I hear them say elderly. I think that this has probably been planned for a while, because we know that there's a big Stillwater Towers that's being given a SCAD, basically. But one of the biggest issues that I find is, this is one area that is big enough in the middle of Savannah that if we had a circus, if we had a fair that is open for that type, or even a rodeo. I mean, I know that probably most of us on this panel wouldn't go to a rodeo, but I think that the park area sounds great, but I just think that there needs to be more public input. And I think that this is very rushed and been decided by developers and closed doors to raise these individuals like Craig to be spokespersons to the community. But so those are my three first observations. My last observation is, I think that we need to talk more about smart plan growth, which benefits everyone and not just gentrifying an area. That's not the way to go. There's public and private dollars that we can bring in to help elevate communities without displacing individuals, and cultivating those communities in ways that Chicago, Boston, and parts of California have done. So those are just immediate observations.
Yeah.
Well, again, kudos to Eric Curl for putting together this timeline here. Again, it's October 2021. How could city council, because I consider you guys, leaders who could be put in a position one day as elected officials. Could you foresee yourself voting for something this large, this risky?
Well, I'll tell you
without having gotten a full vet. How can there be an indictment from July 2021 and the city moves forward to authorize the city manager to negotiate this deal with P3, 3 months after, 4 months after an indictment? I'm really stuck on that point.
Well, here's the thing. I'll say this much, and Carrie understands this. I'm a pure researcher, and one thing about me and my track record in higher education speaks for itself. I am a data-driven person. I rarely will make a decision without data in front of me. The data in this case are the people of Fowler Park. The data are the people of Sylvan Terrace. The data comes from Camp Park, Liberty City, Tatumville, and those surrounding areas. Without the data, I have a hard time understanding how this mayor, this city manager, and this alderwoman can make a decision. You have basically told these people that we don't care about your voice. You've told these people that they don't matter. But these are the same people who you disturbed their community when that fair was there. These are the same people that pay taxes. These are the same people who are getting elderly and who have contributed to the tax base and to this community, to this overall community. These are the same people who couldn't go to Southside or Havisham Woods, or other places in Savannah back in the day. So these are the same people who will have a voice in this project and should have a voice in this project. So without the data, I don't know how they did this. So like you said, Chuck, something's missing here. I don't know what it is.
Happy to see John's active in the comments,
Hey, John.
But yeah, I definitely see your point here, John. Hate to say it, but CETA, might not have done even as bad, without, I don't know. I thought they were in on the deal. I thought there was going to be a hockey thing there at one point, but then it went to Fort Argyle Road. There's obviously so many moving parts. But and as much as I'd like to be fair and congratulate this council and administration when they're right, and it gets done, like we're closing in on impact fees here soon being complete.
I'm going to step in and say
this seems like a massive failure. What is it? Go ahead.
One of the things that I learned from my father, I worked on my first campaign when I was 8 years old, and growing up in politics, one thing I know is you don't go anywhere and you can't get anywhere without asking the community what they want. And if you're not having public conversations, you don't have a phone number for them to call, email, or any kind of survey that's going on to ask them, what do you want? What do you need in your area? I think that's the very simplified answer. The second, the urban planner and one of my other areas is in my PhD program is public administration, urban planning. Combining that, I would say one of the biggest things that we have when we talk about new urbanism and what I keep reiterating is smart plan growth is, first of all, have we went out and asked the local stakeholders, the individuals that are in charge of the neighborhood associations, and went door to door asking them, what do we need in this area? Look at the EPA and the wetland areas to see if is this going to benefit this area? Is this what this area is made for? And how much money is this going to cost on the back end? And then third, if we're not talking about public transit and trying to expand that or bring that into the fold of this area being a point of benefit for people in this community, because that area is highly participates in rideshare and public transit, and we can talk about all the parking that we want, but I think that we need to look forward and not backwards. This design looks like a very 1950s design. It doesn't look like anything that will benefit that area and help elevate that area. And I think we keep talking about retail. There's enough retail on that side. I think we need to be talking about building communities and increasing urban gardens. And I don't see an urban garden at all in this design. So I just don't think a lot of thought has went into the design of this plan. And maybe it's 10 or 12 years old, but it's not up to date. So those are some observations.
What do you think, RG? I'll be right back.
Yeah, I want to bring something into this too, and this is in Carrie's area. This reminds me a lot of the whole. I'm trying to be nice, y'all. I'm doing well with my words. This reminds me of the smoke and mirrors that Diedrich pulled over there with Yamacraw. It also reminds me of the mess they want to do with the Salvation Army and Weeping Time, in that they want to do this stuff so quickly so that the public doesn't know what's going on, and we just make it happen, and everybody's supposed to be happy. No, people are awakened, folks, and you're going to stop bastardizing the west side of Savannah. You're going to stop that, because I can tell you one thing about your mayor and this alderwoman. for the last how many years have they been in office? And flooding is still a problem in West Savannah. And it pisses me off. And I'm so sorry if I'm making so angry. But to see, if you go on that corridor by that Bangville, whatever it is, post office, that area floods every time. Why can't we get it right? You can put all this money down on Broad Street, but my folks over here swimming. And it's just a light rain. I can only imagine if a hurricane comes through here, this area will be like the 9th Ward of New Orleans. And so before we become the Flint, Michigans with poison water, before you poison our water like Jackson, Mississippi, before you try to destroy our community like the 9th Ward in New Orleans, it's going to be a new day because, CJ, I don't know, but I'm going to say here, because that seat's going to change next year with this person. And we're going to start caring about our people. I just want to
reiterate that I think this would be a great benefit because there's so much land there that there could be a really great benefit for the local public schools and to come in and have a garden. What I just don't understand why we need all of this space for more recreational when we've got plenty of parks in the area. Why not have a different sort of ecosystem there as far as a park goes and think about different things that we can do? I just don't think that we've put enough out of the box thinking in this area. And a majority, I think it would be great if I knew that this housing wasn't going to be taken over by an area like SCAD or something else. But we've already pushed people out of these areas and people are vastly moving. So I just don't, again, see how, the quiet thing that's happening in the West Side that we're not talking about is that people's homes are becoming parking lots. White urban dwellers and SCAD students are moving to the West Side because they can't afford housing in anywhere in Starland or downtown or on the West Side. And we're further pushing people out, and even those apartments over on your side people are moving out into Garden City and Port Wentworth, and they're even moving out of Savannah. So I'm just
I don't know if you have been here long enough to remember Mickey's. Mickey's used to be right there across from McDonald's on Montgomery. And that, for people who understand, you got Bobo's, Mickey's, and all that, and then SCAD just comes in and just basically throws up this residential hall. And I work in higher education. I worked at some of the finest and top universities in this nation. But I also know that I don't believe in disturbing people's peace and taking over people's land. And as we saw with indigenous people being displaced, you're not going to, I'll tell you this here, I don't like that. I just don't think that's fair. Honestly, the plan, what SCAD wants to do, and I don't care if they get mad about it, they want all of Montgomery Street. But I can tell you, you won't get Fowler Park as long as I'm breathing. Now, you can take me to the bank on that. You won't get Camp Park as long as I'm breathing. So we've got to, and I'm going to put out that public, we got to get our residents out there to push back on this. And the thing that gets to me is, how did they get this far to feel like it was okay that they thought they could get all this land? So that means you had somebody on this council or county commission, one of the two or not both, who felt it was okay to just rezone. And hold on, I'm going to go with that rezoning in a minute, because this alderwoman also rezoned in Liberty City, which irks my nerves. How did you think that was okay without telling the people? So now let's go to rezoning, Carrie. I don't know if people know what ACL Boulevard is. Right there's a baseball park that this recreation, we don't use it a lot anymore, but it's ours. It's ours. And it was rezoned for the Frank County Boys Club. I love the Frank County Boys Club. Who doesn't? But could you tell your folk that you're going to rezone? You know why it matters, Estella? Because now traffic patterns change. You know why it matters? Because you didn't care enough to take care of that flooding issue that we got. Matter of fact, across the street, city engineers about to hear about that. You know why it matters so much? Because you are now about to interrupt the way of living for people in that community. See, that's why you got to get people involved, because when you don't, you do things knee-jerk reaction without data, you make a fool of yourself. And it's time that we put somebody in all of these seats. Honestly, the only three people on council that really know what they're doing are Keisha, Alicia, and Bernetta. And I stand with Bernetta because I'm so sick of how they've done that district. They've given that district no care. And that person, before he was mayor, basically sold them out years ago. So now she's got to fix that mess.
Let me ask you both something. How do we change it if no one knows about it, though?
Well, I mean, definitely we're doing education. I think now that, hopefully really turned the corner on COVID, I do think more and more community events. But you gave a good segue, and I wanna present, kind of this next topic with you guys. Last night I went to this thing called Vision Zero. Okay, I'm gonna pull this clip up from WTOC, and then we're gonna comment on the other side.
By the year 2027. That's what the city of Savannah is working toward with a new project. Our Alyssa Jackson joins us now to tell us about Vision Zero. Alyssa, it seems like such a difficult task to take on considering how some people are driving.
That's right, Dawn. You would think so. What city leaders keep reiterating is traffic deaths are preventable. They say they want to get away from the mindset of not being able to correct human behavior, but that by designing a plan for roadways that shapes that behavior. On average, Savannah has 22 traffic deaths a year on the streets. That number is unacceptable to city leaders.
For so many of the streets that we have, and they are public rights of way, which all of you own, they were designed to bring us together and to connect us, but they have been acted as barriers for far too long.
So they took a pledge at the beginning of the year to have 0 deaths in the city by 2027.
Beavis and Butthead.
A draft of how they're going to do just that.
So we can start to understand forensically where these incidents are happening around town, why and what causes them. We know that rate of speed is a big determining factor on the severity of an injury when an injury does happen.
The city manager says they'll be putting funding toward updating crosswalks, curb bump outs, and basic infrastructure. All of what they do will be based on data. Mulder says they want safer streets for all, and some residents want them to start in their neighborhoods.
Beg them to come by there and slow the traffic down so the kids can get to school safely. Meanwhile, there is a person parking illegally in front of the fire club, and the traffic cop does absolutely nothing about it.
A long-standing issue for some, people who ignore the speed limit. Some of them say the city can start there.
But I don't know why we can't just go ahead and reduce the speeds where we can to 25. All the way from, White Bluff and Eisenhower on down. To hell with the people if they don't like it.
The city manager also announced they submitted an application last night for a $22 million federal grant to work on.
All right.
But you can't really? And we got alligators in Cloverdale? Are you serious? Oh my God, these are some idiots.
So let me set the scene for you. So last night, CJ and RG, all my abbreviated friends here, I went to this thing. It was at Massey Heritage Center, and before COVID, they used to do these things, like these miniature TED Talks, I'd kind of call them. Does that sound fair? CJ, I'm sure you've been to one of these before at Massey. And so, this was, built around this whole pledge they took called Vision Zero, where, we will have 0 pedestrian deaths, by 2027, right? As somebody who's absorbed and participated and advocated in politics in this market, in Savannah for, 10, 11, 12 years straight now, I can tell you that 70%, maybe 75% of that meeting was very kind of PR, lines, and, we're going to collect more data, and, nowhere in the presentation was enforcement of our current traffic laws mentioned. It wasn't even mentioned until the question and answer period. So, I'm happy they're applying for a grant, but this conversation, CJ, was held in the heart of the 2nd District at Massey Heritage Center on Abercorn. And it was held with the 4th District and 6th District aldermen, with the city manager presenting. And I guess my question is like the Carmen Sandiego thing from the 90s. Where in the world is Dietrich Leggett on this issue? Your thoughts, panel.
First of all, I think that this is very interesting because I had a lot of time to think during COVID, and I wrote a 2-page document that I sent to council and I sent to the mayor, outlining a lot of what they're talking about, which is interesting, and components of complete streets, and also address like how law enforcement's great, but what we could do to change traffic patterns. Um, in downtown and reduce the amount, and also have lighted crosswalks so pedestrians would know when they were in established crosswalk and people know when people weren't, as far as drivers. So I'm going to call bullshit on city council for saying that they came up with it solely by themselves, because I'll pull it up and send you an email and what I sent out to everyone. And I discussed this with Nick Palumbo, and they said, "Oh yeah, we like your ideas." And if we go back to a meeting that was held at earlier this year at Victory North, I addressed some of those ideas at that meeting, and that was the meeting that I told Dietrich Leggett that he needed to start answering his damn phone. And if he didn't answer his phone, I know somebody was going to run against him. And I wanted to know why we can't have any accountability for bettering our streets in our own neighborhoods, because it's great that he's concerned with the city, but not with his own district, and he forgot how to answer the phone. So sorry I went off on a tangent, but
well, let me ask an obvious question. Since enforcement, this was the wildest part of the meeting to me. So in the Q&A, finally somebody stood up and said, well, what about enforcement of traffic laws that we already have? And, how are we going to do that? And it was really telling, but Alderman Curtis Pertee from the 6th District basically said, well, that's kind of the unspoken secret part of this plan, is that we're going to ramp. Yes, exactly. He said we're going to ramp up enforcement.
Need to be secret? I don't understand.
Right? But they said, like, there's going to be blowback. They're gonna talk about us on Q1053, and because we're doing more tickets, or whatever, right? So, like, I agree with you, but the obvious question to me is, how are we going to do that when we're 100 officers down from the budgeted number?
And isn't he an officer?
Well, I honestly think that we can't get anywhere until we start intervention with including the community, because any community that has ever transformed, it has done so with the input of not just the stakeholders who want to run city council behind the scenes, but the individuals who live in those communities. But they're not concerned with the individuals that live in those communities because they're pushing them out.
Yep.
All of this is not just design, it's the culture. It's asking people, what do they need? It's not just putting up sidewalks along waters that was intended 10 years ago that's happening now and claiming it as their own. It's saying, hey, let's make sure that we're changing the climate of CAT, and we get people on that board so people want to ride the bus, and make sure that we have electric vehicles that are somewhat like the city of Chattanooga, which is one of our sister cities. And where can we learn to make it appropriate that people actually can ride their bike and create a culture of being able to do so, to where we're doing all of these things without people being afraid. If you're a tour guide downtown, Chuck, people that are tour guides. How many people are afraid when they're a tour guide and you have a group of 25 to 30 people that they're not going to get hit? I mean, you stand in fear every day crossing that street.
And not just from tourist drivers, from local drivers alike, both.
Maybe I'm being too practical, but this is, like, to me, this is common sense.
wanna follow up on this comment from a viewer that says, the second district alderman does absolutely nothing about a lot. And there is
He parties well. He parties well with Kessler.
Oh yeah. They all do. They get the invites to the Christmas stuff, right?
The sore way.
He's really good at going to funerals, and he's really good at chasing cars.
Ambulance chaser. He should have been a lawyer. So lately there's been this talk, CJ and RG, about this development on what's called a tithing lot on Barnard Street off Pulaski Square, where somebody's trying to build a McMansion. And it just goes that, along the whole argument that we're losing sight of the Oglethorpe plan. Have you guys heard about this? Let me pull up an article.
No.
Well, not only just that, what is really scary to me and really concerning, I don't know if you all, right there at Anderson and Montgomery, where that Church's used to be, the Church's Chicken used to be, and right next to Chew's Market, there are two developments going up there, which is really encroaching on our edge right there. So, I implore residents that we got to start putting folk in office, starting with the 5th District, that's going to be telling you these things, or at least is going to give you the information. And to use the words of as your outgoing alderwoman, it's going to be business as unusual, because we're going to get a usual person who knows how to lead. Because I can't fathom you sleeping at night knowing you done sold these folks out. And this goes across even with the Council 2 leader, whatever he is. Not a McMansion.
So again, this is the heart of the historic district. This is District 2. A McMansion on every lane, written by, this is Jim Marikis at the Savannian. It's a free post, and I'll post the link right now in the comments section for everybody to be able to access themselves. I encourage you to read the whole thing. But this thing is under contract without even being built for $4 million. $4 million. Okay. It's a hugely controversial development because it's basically building, what would be considered, a single family home facing a square on a back lane unit. And it's replacing a piece of land that has 4 like small apartments on it, that are like downtown affordable housing, basically, that I'm sure some, workforce housing, some people who work in the service industry downtown, live in. So, it seems that we are losing control. The last council, CJ, you were very active during the Eddie DeLoach era. They were proud to tell you how much they were giving away the store to development interests in the downtown district, right? Kessler, Eastern Wharf, all of these things that came to fruition during the Eddie DeLoach administration. Now it seems like we've doubled down on that type of ideology and policy, but we are a new group of younger, woke, we juice it up with, kind of the parts of the Democratic Party that are losing, best way to say it. What are your thoughts on, this council kind of losing control over the development after the Eddie DeLoach era?
I think that we have taken a back to small business, and that's why I think it's out of touch. And Keisha and Bernetta and Alicia get hit simultaneously with bringing up how things affect small minority business, and how many small minority business that we saw close up. But I think that change is good if it includes the community, but I think that a lot happened and a lot of decisions were made at rapid speed to get as much done as possible with the group that knew that they wanted to get more done than without limitations. And I think that they were willing to do that at the cost of probably being reelected. if we were to be honest. And I think that growth is always good if it's, again, getting community input. And we had opportunity to do that during COVID, but I don't know how well that was received and how well that was accomplished when the community was not engaged, outside of really focusing on Forsyth Park redesign, which made no effing sense. To John's question, the last council, what's the difference? I feel like the last council was beat over the head with having to answer to the public, and this council was supposed to be more engaging. And I think they're posting on Facebook and being celebrities. And I don't want to make people feel bad for doing that because that's their style. That's what works. But forums are great online, but how much engagement do we really get on data collection, to your point, RG, if we're not having like a city sanctioned focus group, even if it's online, getting data from our own city departments, collecting that data from the public rather than as individuals doing it online. Does that make sense? I mean,
Makes sense.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to make
most
sure
times.
I'm not over
Well,
talking here.
no, I think that makes sense. Really quick, not to interrupt, but shout out to Savannah State University and Benedict College. They're on Easy ESPN Live. Don't leave us, but I just want to give a shout out to our hometown team. Go Tigers.
Sweet.
But to go back to what you're saying, CJ, I think honestly, in all fairness, and I don't agree with the task forces, but the 1,000 task forces that this mayor has created, I get it. I believe that was the intent. The problem is when you create a task force, a committee, whatever, their group is to study an issue, bring back recommendations. The failure has been, what do you don't just put the recommendations on the shelf. I studied diversity leadership and chief diversity officers. And one of the things we know about diversity in organizations, they get these cute reports and they put them on the shelf. You don't do that. You give the information and you implement them. So what would I do with that? And what would you do with that? And Chuck would probably do the same thing. I would say, okay, here are the recommendations. Council, let's look at these recommendations. City manager, implement the recommendations. And then we're going to hold you accountable to that. And that's the way I kind of see it working, is that, this is a city manager run type of government, a government structure. And so while the city manager doesn't necessarily work for me, he wouldn't be the admin of per se of all the person, but that city manager is accountable to that council. And so these recommendations, these tasks, these flooding issues should not linger that long if you are operating in a way that makes sense and if we're holding people accountable.
Well, I mean, we're 51 days outside of the election. I asked this question at the top of the show to RG, CJ. You've been very involved with voting rights and advocates, and I know are working for outside groups for the rest of the election cycle here. What are your thoughts on the work being done in our area to contribute to broader statewide efforts from someone on the ground?
I think that the 501c3 organizations are working really hard to connect with voters. And I want to give kudos to the Board of Elections, and especially the Board of Registrars, for making a lot of inroads and working with organizations that are directly, pushing input and listening to that input and bettering elections, but we still have a long way to go. But as far as issues in our own community, I don't think the city council has responded well to national and state issues like giving us access to the reproductive care that we need. One might disagree that abortion care is not reproductive care. I think that was a big opportunity that the city had and decided not to echo what Atlanta was doing. I think that we've had 4 years to think about how to include better walkability and better communities on the south side, and that is a growing concern because people are looking to alternative travel to and from work. and it's harder for people to get around on the south side of Savannah. That's huge. But the biggest things that we have are the most basic things that we're hearing on the streets, that are things that the city can do to help out, which is making our roads safer, because a lot of people are still having to drive to work, and trying to expand public transit to areas that don't have those services, and maybe finding rapid bus services that would be able to connect them. And instead of pushing people out, we could create programs with federal and state dollars, like Statesboro's doing. With Mayor McCollar has brought in programs to make housing, purchasing homes, which would make cost cheaper than renting an apartment. But yet we have companies coming in and buying and remodeling homes to become STVRs, and we could look to Tybee to know how depressive that is to our urban core. But our biggest thing are healthcare. How do we get people to have dollars in their pockets to be able to continue their businesses rather than leaving Savannah and moving out of Savannah to other places? And keeping our folks here, and working with our Board of Education in order to make inroads, and have our city talking, and rather than disagreeing with our county commission and our Board of Education and our Board of Elections, we could be working with these groups in order to bettering services for local individuals. But we don't have those conversations. We have a group that has become very isolated and
siloed, always siloed.
Yeah. Sorry, but those are some observations that we're hearing. But the biggest thing is, connectivity, and that's the least we can do to offset increasing inflation and gas prices, and making sure that our LGBT communities are taken care of, and our women are be able to get reproductive health care.
And if I could add,
go ahead, RG, please go ahead.
We don't give enough credit to the school board and the superintendent, who's done a phenomenal job. I had the pleasure of hearing her present at the NAACP meeting. Don't you know that Chatham County has some stellar partnerships that's led by Superintendent Levitt and her team and the educators in our K-12 schools? And we boast and have celebrated a graduation rate that's the best in the state of over 90%. So I just want to give a shout out to Ann Levitt and her team and the educators in our K-12 schools who've just done a phenomenal job. And so, because I do know that this new school board president coming in doesn't have our interests at heart. And keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Well, go ahead,
Chuck,
CJ.
I think that you and I have had this discussion in Kroger. It's that our school system, you made this point to me in passing on the ice cream aisle, but you said, that.
True story.
It could have been the wine. I think it was the wine aisle.
No, it was not wine. It was the ice cream aisles were always fine, Chuck. But we had he made a good point that the surrounding school districts they're not up to par with Chatham County. We think that
Right.
Chatham County is really bad, but Chatham County, as far as its public education, it's better than most of the school systems surrounding Savannah. So as much as we want to put it down, we have a pretty good education system.
I think we've got some really strong elementary schools. I think our middle and high schools have some improvement to be had.
Well, Julius would disagree because he thinks Woodsville Tompkins is.
I don't want to get into a high school debate. I didn't go to high school here. You know how that goes. So.
Well, gentlemen, I went to Sequatchie County High School, okay, where there was 86 people in my graduating class. So if I can get a PhD, I think that one has certain advantages coming out of the public school system in Chatham County, and they need to apply the opportunities that they have, and they could get somewhere with that.
I'm glad you posted that, Chuck, really quick. And I agree with Bernard. I the homeless problem in Savannah, that's another one I don't understand our council has not worked on. As a matter of fact, what breaks my heart, and I don't know how many people drive down President Street, but you got Eastern Wharf right there, y'all. $500,000 homes, and 10 steps down the road, you got folks living in tents and hungry. I don't know what that just disturbs me. And I'm not, and you call me socialist all you want, I don't give a doggone. But in this or on this world, how can we be okay with that? How can we send money to Ukraine and we got folk hungry and not with a house?
RG, we have 39 homeless camps and counting, growing in this area. We are no longer talking about unaccompanied, unsheltered men and women. We're talking about men and women with families.
And check this out, though. But CJ, check this out. And I've got this. What bothers me about this council. And Chuck, I don't know if y'all know about this, but the CARES Act money was another set of money that this mayor mismanaged, federal money. But anyway, and Pat Monahan, whoever mismanaged. But anyway, but what gets me is I have a lady here working on a nonprofit. And do you know how hard it is just to get funding to help homeless folk? But yet they worry about putting bricks on Broughton. Like, I don't get this foolishness.
But they can't cut the grass on Broughton and can't cut the grass on Victory Drive. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I want to make sure and end our show tonight and make sure everybody, because I know when we announced that we were going to have a live show for our 100th episode. It's on Monday, October 10th, 7 p.m. And I just put the link in the chat. This is the website, the Eventbrite to register. It's at the Front Porch Improv Theater, 210 West Victory Drive. There's parking off street or on street parking all around there on 43rd, Barnard and Jefferson. The tickets are free, right? So this is a free show. It's our 100th episode. I'm so glad to have CJ and RG on tonight because they both stepped in over the last couple of years at different times to be guest hosts and kind of contribute to the content that we produce. I will say this. I don't know what the show is going to be just yet, but suffice to say, like, I've got John and I and RG, we're kind of looking at like 3 different formats and different parts, different types of show, and based on negotiations with some of these guests, including some potential statewide candidates for office, I imagine that the seats will fill up relatively quickly over the next 2 weeks. So, we had the first week of tickets just go out to all of our kind of friends of the show, past guests, and our supporters, patrons, and members who support this organization. And so about a third of the tickets are already, kind of reserved here on this Eventbrite. So again, please register to get your tickets. It's in the description of the show on the podcast platform tonight. Just hit that Eventbrite, register, grab your tickets. The maximum you can register for is 4. So, again, get them while nobody knows who the guests are going to be. Because once we announce the guests and the show, I think it'll be one of those events. At least I'm hoping, because I want to kind of be special for John, and I want to do some special things for this episode. So I'm hoping that it'll be really big and it'll be one of those events where people go, "You should have been there." So register, get them free while you can now, and I know both of you guys will be there.
Yeah, like it.
You got
Absolutely.
it. Hey, I just want to
Sure.
give a
What else you
shout
got?
out to those individuals who have worked really hard to raise money for groups that work with the homeless. I've had an advantage to be able to work with J.C. Lewis doing voter registration, the Emmaus House, and the Homeless Authority, and their heart's in it. They're out there doing good work. They're out there fighting for the homeless. They're out there to get them housing and get them resources they need. And one of the biggest assets that we have now is the women's shelter that opened in the old J.C. Lewis location, Parker's house. I just want to say that there are some good things happening in our community that are helping, and a lot of that goes to the people working every day and not getting the rewards of the contributions that they're making.
All right. Well, thanks for stopping by. We'll be back next week, hopefully with a post-council update on some more things. There's some wild stuff going on in City Hall, as usual, in City of Savannah politics. So we'll be back for episode number 97 next week. And again, hit that link if you want to join us October 10th, 7 p.m. at the Front Porch Improv Theater. Get your tickets at the Eventbrite and join us for what I hope will be an awesome show. We'll see you guys next week.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAD start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.